Warmest of greetings, friends, and welcome to Dicefunction Discussion, the official Dicefunctional podcast, where a bunch of friends sit around and discuss their D&D game with you guys. Greetings and salutations. It's been a little bit, guys. I understand. One, the world's been a little crazy in between us recording the last podcast and now, and two, there's been a fair bit that's been happening in each episode, so wanted to let a few things happen, talk to some different people, and can bring you a little bit more interesting podcast. We might be changing some things up in the future, but for now, want to keep things same and talk to a couple of friends who've had some interesting stuff happen to their characters, especially the one of them. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Real quick bit of housekeeping. Obviously, if you're listening to this, thank you. Thank you for taking a moment to go ahead and listen to our podcast. Obviously, all of the previous episodes of our D&D show, Dicefunctional, should be found same place you found this. You can listen to future episodes or past episodes here. If you have enjoyed this, we would appreciate you rating it, letting other people know, hey, this is a pretty cool thing that everyone over at Dicefunctional is doing. We appreciate that. But that is all for housekeeping. So let's get into some questions. Let's get into some discussion. And to join me in that discussion today, I have Becca, who's the voice of Deah, and special guest, who's a special guest in the past few episodes. We have Kody, who's the voice of Haru. Guys, how's it going?
It's going fairly well.
Yeah, pretty good.
Excellent. So it's been pretty exciting to say kind of real quick recap, especially since the last one. Let's see. We've taken down the Rosenvales. We have had a little bit of time to move some things around, fix some things, update some things with the crew, and then the crew took set sail. Upon setting sail, our boy Haru was fished out of the ocean, and then we were all promptly attacked more than once, which is interesting, and then made our way to an island after having a big sea battle. And then we're attacked again by a dragon, and that's where we're leaving this one off. Obviously, if you didn't already know that, first of all, how dare you? Second of all, yeah, there will be plenty of spoilers. So if you haven't listened to the most recent episode, please do. But yeah, so let's start with this. So most recently, we fought a sea dragon of some sort. Especially after having fought a couple kind of sea serpents, and then a bunch of things that had something ocean related to them, and then almost immediately fighting a sea dragon. Kind of, is this concerning to your characters at all, or are they just kind of going with the flow at this point?
Deah's got like a conspiracy board up in the captain's quarters. This red string all over, like it's all connected.
That's fair.
I'd say that Haru kind of lives much of his life just going with the flow.
Yeah.
If he knew a bit more of the background to all of this, then there might be a bit more concern, but for the time being, not too much.
For the time being, it's not that bad, right?
Right. Nobody's died yet.
Therefore, it is not bad. There we go. Problem solved, right?
Problem solved. No, I joke about the conspiracy theorist Deah, but really it's more like it is a little worrisome if they're not connected somehow. There's a lot happening within a short time frame, which in and of itself speaks to a larger problem. So that's where she's at with her red string and crazed, late night conspiracies.
Like, what the heck, man?
This
What is this nonsense?
Yeah. This Lord of the Sea guy kind of reminds me of Caesar from the Civilization games. Quick to attack you and then sue for peace when you overpower him.
Kind of, yeah, a little bit. As per usual, Gale's only thought is we will break them, and with the amount of damage that he did to that dragon and, shattering the thing's collarbone in one hit, Gale's not that concerned at the moment.
Yep.
Which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but we will certainly find out.
Certainly have very different focuses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. Gale is one of those where he is not too concerned with the kind of the short term. Gale has this unyielding belief that, we're going to win, we're going to find a way to do that, and whatever this is, it's going to try and kill us, and it's just not going to be able to. And again, completely unshakable. Like, there's nothing that could possibly happen to Gale at this point that would make him go, "Oh, this is probably a huge problem, and I should really concentrate on this more," because that's just Gale's personality.
The anime protagonist kind of mindset.
Oh yeah, Gale very much has that. Yeah, it's I can't even. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, and I can't off the top of my head. But yeah, no, he's very much like we have friends, we have the power of the light. Like, we're just gonna win. Well, that's all there is to it. We're just gonna win. We just have to figure out how the best way to go about that is. So we'll see, especially with how weird things are getting now. I mean, also, to be fair, too, Gale really hasn't been hit that much in the past couple fights, at all.
Yeah.
So
that plus temp HP.
Gale ended that fight, by the way, with 1 temp HP.
Yeah.
And didn't go below his max at all in the fight. Yeah.
Meanwhile, one person went down and 2 almost went down.
Yeah.
Actually, 2 went down.
Yeah, at once.
Yeah. The Paladin Barbarian didn't get hit once, then got temp HP, and then didn't lose all of the temp HP. So, yeah, that was...
Remind me to lifelink with you.
I know, right? Somehow, I don't know what it's been lately, but Gale has somehow ended up not in the middle of... Ever since the Rosenvale fight, Gale has just managed to not end up right in the middle of the shit. He had his one moment where he essentially took over 200 points of damage in the course of 2 fights and never went down. So, yeah. The boy is magical, and not even I, as the player, can explain it. So we're just going to go with that. But yeah. Such as D&D, as we all know.
Yeah,
the dice
I'm
decide.
Playing a chess game because I have to position myself to see everybody.
Oh yeah, that's got to make it interesting. Let's talk about that real quick. So, for those of you that maybe missed this detail or it has not fully clicked, Kody, do you mind kind of explaining Haru's sight disability in this case?
Yes. So Haru is a class. It's a sort of a homebrew class that was adapted from Pathfinder called the Oracle. And each Oracle, they take from the cleric spell list, and the Oracles are kind of like a stronger version of the cleric specialization, but they each come with a curse that some of them are fairly debilitating. In Haru's case, he has clouded eyes, which means that he cannot see anything at all beyond the range of 30 feet. However, within that 30 feet, he can see normally. And because we're currently level 10, he also can see through magical darkness and has basically permanent detect magic. So within that 30 feet, he can see well.
That's kind of a fair trade-off, depending on how you're able to play that.
Yeah.
At least Haru isn't a character that needs to... at least he doesn't need to fight melee, or ranged. Her doesn't need to really fight a whole ton, so that's got to help a little bit.
Yeah, the difficulty there is I can see on the map where allies and enemies are, but I can't really use that knowledge. So basically, it's a method of tracking them. Where did I last see them, and what direction were they headed in?
That's
It's
fair.
that kind of a concept where I base context clues off of and my knowledge of the terrain, and that is how I have to work to position myself. So far, the party has done a fairly good job of actually staying close and within that range, but with larger battle maps against multiple enemies, it's going to get much more difficult.
Well, you have the advantage now of Gale having bought a bunch of wind chimes. So you will be able to hear where everybody is.
You will know where Gale is at all times.
I'm still laughing about this. I didn't even think about it until after the fact that Gale had tied, with Deah's help, had tied the wind chimes to his antler. So the whole time there were just wind chimes just rattling off that whole fight, which is fucking hilarious.
How will that affect stealth in the future?
That would absolutely affect stealth. It's
He already doesn't do well at stealth, so it's really just par for the course.
Yeah. You know what? Gale doesn't have disadvantage on stealth anymore, so I'll take it. Oh god, that was so
when
rough.
we need to stealth next, we'll just make him like hold on to the wind chimes so they don't rattle. So he's walking around with like his arms up.
Oh man, yeah, that might be something. See, Gale's had a couple ideas of like things he can add to like the helmet and whatever, and just kind of boost the weird woods spook aesthetic that he has going on for like fights.
Definitely help with that.
Oh yeah, that's kind of why he was looking for like those bone wind chimes and like hang those off the sides of the thing, so that way as he's like creeping along, there's just that weird like hollow rattling that happens.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Oh yeah.
If we encounter lizard folk, it could probably craft them for you.
Probably. Gale would be into that. It'd be interesting. But we'll see in future adventures. Right now, we're dealing with a bunch of sea-related creatures. So I will ask you now as the players. So we have dealt with, and obviously if you know anything specific, no spoilers. But in terms of where we're kind of thinking, whatever this is, do we think that the big thing that's been attacking ships is this Lord of the Sea, or do you think it's one of its minions?
Given that it's been seen at the surface, and all of the minions we've seen so far have not been big enough to crunch ships, I'm currently inclined to think that this Lord of the Sea is doing that. The other option that I can see is that somehow like another set of pirates or something has this ability to crunch ships through like magic or a pact or something. I don't really know. To get sacrifices. So we don't have a ton of information yet, just that something really big crushed ships, and this is currently the only really big thing we've even seen a hint of or heard of.
Yeah.
It could very well be a combination of them. Like
that too.
Larger groups of ships or ones that are particularly troublesome. The Lord of the Sea comes to deal with them or something like that.
Yeah, I could see that. Could be a lot of different things.
Like maybe it's like Pirates of the Caribbean, and they do the giant like drum to sum up the Lord of the Sea, and he comes in and goes hum. You've seen Pirates of the Caribbean, right?
Yeah. Like we're gonna throw a rave with a jar of dirt and summon this big thing. Yes. Here for this? Here for this. Can what DJs can we get to play this? Also, can it replace Lollapalooza? Thanks. I'm here for this. No, I think those are all really. Those are definitely options, especially the way I'm thinking of it lately too. It's like, okay.
Yeah, my
So
current
when we kill the big
mental
thing, is that
image
gonna
of
like?
him is, sorry.
Yeah.
My current mental image of him is like Kraken mixed with an aboleth.
Probably.
Yeah, it could be something like that.
Yeah, Jace, what are you thinking though?
I'm like, a part of me is thinking this Lord, like the big thing is like the Lord of the Deep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lord of the Deep, quote unquote, is being used by like some other thing. You know, so the fact that everyone's like, oh, we're worshiping the Lord of the Deep or the Lord of the Ocean or whatever it is that, you know, whatever screen name he's using right now. It's not actually that thing that's doing the thing. It's this other like entity, whatever they may be, who's like, oh yeah, look at this. And the one's essentially like the mouthpiece of this whole operation.
Yeah.
That's kind of where my head's going. But again, as with everything that we've seen in the story so far, it could be one of like a million things.
Yeah.
We have lots of cool things going forward with that.
Yes.
I guess we'll see as we continue to learn more information. We will figure this out eventually. And I am interested because, you know, I wouldn't think that a big dumb idiot would have an emissary of the sea. So it does make sense.
Yeah, maybe we need to fight it with illusions because those are often intelligence-based.
There you go. Make it think the rock is
Psychic
like a
idiot.
thing and it starts like diving head first into a landmass until it knocks itself unconscious.
Oh my god.
Yep. In fact, if you use Feeble Mind and it's successful, then it drops its intelligence and charisma scores both to 1.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
Unless if it's not already one.
That is also true.
Yeah.
do you think it's from another plane? Like the elemental plane of water?
I'm thinking it is. Just 'cause
I
we've
honestly I honestly think it's just from really, really deep in the ocean.
Really?
Kind of like it's like the Underdark, but like watery.
So the underwater.
Yeah, the underwater.
There you go. That one's free chat. You're welcome for that.
Yes, Rose's worst nightmare.
The underwater. Dude, I can't even swim in the water. Why are you trying to make me go under the water? Like, what the heck, man? Yeah, no, that would be nightmarish. That is definitely a good theory. I'm just excited to learn more about it
Yeah.
because it seems really, really cool. Whatever it is, it's going to be a fun time. And I think we're going to be able to fight it, which is also going to be a fun time.
And if it's in the underwater, we will
Exactly.
fulfill your dream of going underwater to fight it, I guess.
Yeah. On the way back up, I'll probably have to do like Aura of Life so that people just don't die from the bends.
From the back.
Gotta make sure we don't get air bubbles in our
Exactly.
veins. Yeah.
It's the usual water walking rule, and for those curious, Connor the DM has already said that he is approaching the water walking rule same as most DMs that any of us have known when it comes to water walking. That it's a magical use of equalizing pressure as you rise up to the surface of the water to prevent things like the bends or literally blowing yourself up due to pressure changes. So for those curious about that.
It would be cool to see, though.
It would be hella interesting to see.
Just not on us.
Well, it'd be even more interesting. Could you use it as a weapon where you cast water walking on someone forcibly, force them halfway up, get the momentum going, right? And then cut off the spell So all of a sudden, like, they're still underwater, but there's just a massive pressure differential all at once.
Oh my god. That's so
This is where
Yes.
my head
That's-
goes.
oh god.
I mean,
This is why I'm not allowed to be a spellcaster this time around. 'Cause I would
There
have
was
done
a
shit
time
like
in
that.
another game where the way how we dealt with a mind flayer was my character cast levitate on it and had it float in the air while another character cast wall of light on it, so it just sizzled in there and couldn't get away.
Oh, nice.
Oh no, that's a good one. I like
That-
that
And
one.
you
that's a
hide
wombo
behind
combo.
pillars so that it can't see you, so it can't target you with its psionic abilities.
Hee. It's like, what you gonna do now, punk? That's a good way of handling one. Yeah.
I don't think levitate would work on this creature though.
Maybe not.
You'd have to have. I feel like you'd have to have a lot of juice. Yeah, have to put like all of the juice behind that.
It targets a creature that can weigh up to 500 pounds, so if it's full of a bunch of hot air, maybe.
Maybe.
I think by virtue of how much skin it has to have, I think even if it was full of air, it would be more than 500 pounds.
By virtue of skin alone, over 500 pounds. I can't.
Yeah.
So that's the mental image that I'm gonna have now. Oh, look at this thing! It's 500 pounds of skin.
At least, at minimum.
Oh man, yeah. You can only imagine based off of how much whales weigh that it probably weighs a couple tons.
Yeah.
It's safe to say. It's the magic of water, by the way. Is all that stuff is less awful. All right, so we got a couple questions. We'll bring up the questions, kind of make sure we're hitting on all sorts of different talking points. We got one for Becca here, so I'm going to go ahead and ask that one first. So Jess, Voice of Mercy, left in chat. So how does, for Deah, how does it feel to be a captain of a ship for the first time? She was raised to do this, but with everything that happened, did she think that the opportunity was lost? Does she regret being on the scene now without any of her former crew?
I thought about this question a little bit earlier, but not the full thing. But it's there's definitely an element of like it doesn't feel quite real. Like she's doing the captain things, but she views it as temporary, like a temporary gig. So it doesn't like have the same kind of sense of like ownership that actually being a captain would entail.
Yeah.
So she does kind of like adapt to it, because you know she was sort of prepared to become a captain at one point. Although obviously, or maybe not obviously, but she's probably a bit rusty. But you know, first time for everything. But yeah, like most of like a good chunk of the crew is like her is Fortune's Blade, and Fortune's Blade is like it has sort of like past temporary leadership to her, so it feels very temporary to her. So she's not really like super into it, and like super passionate about it because it's like it's just another job at this point. But did she think the opportunity was lost? Yeah, basically. Like she kind of didn't think she would be in charge of a ship at all or on the sea at any length of time, you know, outside of going from point A to point B. So it is sort of a weird place for her at the moment as well.
Yeah.
She's not entirely sure how she feels about that. But it is sort of nice in a way to be back on the sea, like actually sailing and not just a passenger. But does she regret being on the sea now without any of her former crew? Oh boy. I'll touch on it lightly because I do kind of want it to come up, but like I don't know in what capacity it will.
Yeah, so this is something that'll develop as we go, it sounds like.
Yeah, she's already kind of said it, so I don't feel bad saying it now. But like most of her crew turned against her and her brother and like basically mutinied and shoved them off the ship. And until that moment she thought that like they were basically family, you know, it's a pirate crew. You ride or die. You know, everyone there was at least her friend.
Yeah.
Or so she thought. So there's this like immense sense of betrayal that has followed, but there's still a lot of like sadness involved. Like this was like her big family, and she really does miss that. And if there's, well, how do I put this? So she doesn't want to like harm her past crew if she can avoid it, because like there's still like a really good like a you know a stubborn part of her, let's call it, that still views them as like sort of family even after all that, because it really was like probably the where all of her happiest memories were on her past where it was on her old ship. It's hard to let go of that. So there is sort of, I don't know if it's like I wouldn't say she regrets being on the sea without her former crew, but she misses them.
Doesn't hit quite the same.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's totally fair. Especially when you're used to doing something with a certain group or like certain individuals. Like we all get that in a lot of different ways in life, and especially, you know, Deah spent, can only assume, a significant number of years with, you know, with that crew in such a close confined space for such a long period of time. You know, you develop those relationships with those people.
Yeah,
and it's
you
spent
over
learn
a decade.
to trust them.
Yeah, over a decade with them. Because when you met her, she was 25, I think.
Yeah.
And she joined the crew a few years after she turned 10. So like, you know, preteen, early teen years. So.
Oh yeah.
Over a decade, and this has been mentioned at different times. A long time ago, but it was mentioned.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
So it's not a spoiler.
Not a spoiler. Hashtag not a spoiler. Those are always the good ones to get to. I will put this as one quick follow-up question. And then we have a couple questions for Kody. So you mention that this leadership role right now to Deah feels temporary.
Yeah.
Is it that she feels like somebody else in Fortune's Blade kind of carries a leadership role, or does she just feel like, it really isn't like a singular leader, and the fact that I'm kind of in charge is like, this is only because I know this terrain more?
I would say it's more the latter. I wouldn't say it's a pure democracy, because there are definitely people in the group who take charge more often. But yeah, there's not really one leader of Fortune's Blade, even if in the beginning she kind of wanted to be the one clear leader. But with all the butting heads and different viewpoints, it doesn't really work out that way. She's kind of accepted that at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Kind
of. Just kind of. Yeah. Hey, leading that group would be infinitely more stressful, and yeah.
God.
a lot of work. Imagine hoarding cats. Now all of the cats have guns and have been fed 4 cans of Red Bull. Oh,
my
and
God.
also there may have been some drugs in that. Oh, and also it's, a 4,000 acre field. Good luck wrangling them now.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go retire now. Bye.
Exactly. Well, that will lead us into our first question here for Kody. So Haru has now experienced the cat wrangling that can sometimes be Fortune's Blade, even though on a small scale. So Michelle, the voice of Rudy, brought this up, and I think this might be an interesting place to start. So from Haru's perspective, with kind of the limited time that they've spent with Fortune's Blade, what are some of their takeaways? Like, what do they feel about some of the individual members of the crew?
Well, there's certainly a lot of different, at times almost conflicting personalities, but in that same sense, it seems that everybody has at least one other person that they share quite a bit of interests and traits with. So it allows this feeling of both uniqueness as well as sort of solidarity. Quite a few of the people are fairly outspoken, and this is both in what they say and in their actions. People are not afraid to immediately launch into something, which I feel that part of that, especially from what I've heard about people talking about how long it took for them to share certain things and get to this point, I have a feeling that that wasn't initially the case. Like, people are a bit more reserved for the most part, maybe not as immediate to do something like, this is my job, I can do this without having to worry about stepping on other people's toes and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the crew as individuals goes, that's a whole different thing entirely. And that it is almost like that herding cats that you described, where to even begin with some of the personalities there, it almost takes an hour to just tell the story.
You would be correct in that, yeah, absolutely.
From what I've picked up on just general personalities, and I'll kind of go through the list of the cards in the Discord. Deah is kind of, she feels like she is very responsible for everybody and wants to be that sort of solid foundation, but also at times feels a bit overwhelmed. And that can be very frustrating, and so that is a major part of her interaction with these other pirates, especially the ones that were former crew. There's a bit of indecision, but also personal growth that comes from actually making a decision at the end of the day. Gale is very impulsive, I'd say is the best term for it.
Yeah, that is the kind term for it, so we'll go with that one. I like that one.
He doesn't often think things through, but at the same time he is very dependable when it comes down to it. It can leave his allies a bit stranded at times, drawing them into things they'd rather stay out of, or having to rush to clean up after whatever the situation is falls apart. But ultimately, he's there for all of his friends and will do whatever it takes to make sure that everything turns out as best as possible. I unfortunately haven't had the chance to see too much of Maddie because she keeps going down.
This is true. Maddie's had a rough go of it the past couple fights for sure.
Yeah.
She's
But
been in the worst spots.
she is fairly, I'd say she is somewhat of a strategist. Has at her disposal both very powerful damaging spells as well as healing, and tries to position herself in the way where she can help everybody out the most. But she, because of this constant damage and stuff, she doesn't put herself out there quite as much as she is able to. So there's a little bit of this almost introversion there. She just needs to gain the confidence to really go forward with it and rely on her allies for just covering all of the parts where she might be a bit lacking in. Mercy is a very strong individual, both in terms of physical strength and as well as like her personality and emotions. She is capable, but doesn't seem to participate too much in some of the side things, like, I don't know, going some of the discussions that might not be her main interest. She doesn't take the opportunity to engage even outside of her comfort zone. So it's kind of like this bulwark, but if that is cracked away, there's a little bit of fragileness underneath. She seems to want the best for everybody and is not afraid to take personal risks in order to achieve that. Ro is just a bundle of sass.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Like it's like that saying like you mess with her, you get the stick, but in this case the stick is a gun. She is very much one who has a lot of discomforts, but she is not afraid to step outside of that comfort zone when it is required of her. Of course, all of this sailing on open water, reading books, which she struggles with, even participating in some conversations where she might not know the best what is happening or what she should be doing in those situations, but she launched herself into it and is willing to figure out the steps along the way. And in that part she's actually fairly similar to Gale, except instead of the first impulse being rushing in, like headlong into things, her first impulse is to fall back and get a more strategic point to take things from. Rudy, I'd say that there hasn't been nearly as many interactions, and of course I missed the first bit of I believe it was session 74 or maybe 73, where like you were all in the library, so I missed what everybody was there for. She is very much the intellect strategist, relies quite a bit on knowledge and experience, but also has a tendency to try to go with what has worked in the past without necessarily trying to decide if there are other alternatives. I'd say like the go-to move is like the psychic damage with fireball. And you can't say I'm wrong there.
You're not wrong. No, definitely not.
Yeah. But we've with all of this, we've yet to really see her put too far outside of her comfort zone. So I'm sure that a lot more will be revealed when that eventually happens.
Oh yeah, there should be a lot. Just
And
kind of
let's see.
yeah.
I believe that is everybody. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anybody.
If I'm going off my mental checklist, that should be everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
that is all.
Yeah. All interesting observations. Very interesting observations, especially coming in there like that. So
Yeah.
we'll
It's,
see.
it's also really neat to get like an outsider's perspective on the characters, because like we know how, like, everyone knows how we're intending to play the characters, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel at this point, because you've had these characters for so long and built them up so much, they've also taken on some of the personalities of the players.
Oh, for sure.
That almost strengthens them because you already have this cohesion with one another as people. So it's this willingness to overlook in-character issues.
Oh yeah. You become blind to certain things. Yeah, that's interesting. It definitely is.
So we're all in common there.
Oh yeah. We will. It'll be cool to see how that changes and how the characters change going forward. And that's kind of especially why I like the fact that we have you on and, we're able to ask you that questions to get that kind of benchmark now. So, later when it's like, oh yeah, this is all 100% correct. And then, maybe in some cases it'll be like, maybe they were like that, but they completely changed. Or, hey, we all got grabbed by a Kraken Titan thing and drugged to the bottom of the sea and eaten by a kaiju. So hey, roll new characters. We'll see. So to move back to you real quick here, Kody. So one thing honestly that I found interesting. So you do something interesting when it comes to character creation, and I'll let you explain a little bit about it. Because then I have a question kind of regarding character choice here. So you roll to create your characters, correct?
Yes. The first thing I do is like talk with the DM, have an understanding of what races are allowed, if there are any additional races I should include, etc. And the same for classes. Now it's slightly different in this case because I was coming into an existing game and a fairly high level by most game standards at that. So instead of rolling from all classes, I was like, what does the party need? They need a healer. Okay, so I'm going to limit myself to classes capable of main healing, which was Bard, Druid, Cleric, Paladin, Oracle, Celestial, Warlock, and Divine Soul Sorcerer. So those were the ones that I rolled between. But my method is just make a list, and it doesn't matter the ordering as long as it's consistent for the rolls. Just use either Roll20 or random.org to roll for the race, find what it is in the list, and I do 2 additional ones as backup in case if I go to the DM and they're like, this race doesn't really work out in this context, or they wouldn't be found here, etc. Same with the classes, except I do 2 of them. And then from there, it's like having different types of puzzle pieces, and how do you fit them together to make something that makes sense and is an interesting character.
That's totally fair. I think that's a really cool way of approaching character creation, especially if you feel like you've played a lot of different types of characters or a lot of different like classes, and kind of want to go, what sort of weird combination can I come up with? Oh yeah, no, it's really cool. So kind of begs the question: have you ever played a kitsune before, and were you excited to finally get to play one? If not,
So, yes, I've actually played them twice before. One of them is 3 years ago, and it was also a healer base, but it was a cleric and pathfinder. And that one, it was a much different approach than here, because in that world setting, they were almost feared because of the ability to shapeshift. So characters spent most of the time appearing as a human and didn't really use like the racial magical abilities and all that. But it was personality-wise somewhat similar to Haru, but I'd say a lot more introverted, a lot less confident. The other one was for a one-shot that ended up being 3 sessions, and it was based around going through a dungeon that was full of like mimics and stuff like that. And that character was a warlock and very secretive and all that. And he also had the unfortunate title of being the least lucky character I've ever played.
Oh no.
Oh no.
The stat average after racial adjustments and 2 ASIs, because we were level 9 for that, was, I think the average was 10.5. I kept an Excel spreadsheet of their rolls throughout the game, and for D20 rolls, 86% of rolls were a 5 or lower.
Oh
I don't
God.
know how
boy.
it
On a
managed that.
D20?
Yes, I don't
Oh
know
my
how it
God.
managed that, but it was so apparent that halfway through the first session, I just literally put into their like character things like has incredibly awful luck, because that was just how it was turning out.
Oh no.
Jesus.
However, still was able to work with the character because I was able to rely on the other party members for much of the like ability checks and tools and things like that. So I switched up my strategy for that character with doing a lot of spells that required saving those and had assured damage, because that way I took the luck out of my hands.
Oh boy.
Not a bad way to do that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You adapt to the dice.
Yeah, all in all,
Sometimes you have to.
yeah, vastly different characters. I'd say each time I go start with a race, I try to research what the lore is on it and see if there are any changes to it in this particular world. For instance, Haru, he's from the continent of Sugoye. I'm not sure if I pronounced that properly because I haven't heard it much, but Sugoye, whatever.
Yogi or something.
Connor's
The
not here
kitsune
to yell at
place.
us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
they're all shapeshifters are required by the law to wear a band to identify them as shapeshifters. So that way,
Oh.
if they're assuming a different form, then people are able to recognize that. But I also don't expect most people to recognize that outside of the continent. So
Yeah.
it plays a lot into personality and how they approach certain situations, whereas in another setting, character might be much more willing to go in appearing as someone different and try to lie their way through. This character is a lot more open and would instead try to persuade their way through a situation.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see what Haru does going forward, for sure. I'm excited to see. So, to kind
Nobody's
of
asked
end
him
this,
anything about his backstory or anything like that.
I mean, we haven't really gotten to a whole ton of it, and I'm wondering. I mean, I'm curious to see where we get to as far as all of that, for sure.
Like two sessions ago, towards the end, where it's like had this almost groundbreaking information. It's like, why didn't you say anything about it sooner? It's like, well, I did not have any context for it.
Exactly.
Did not know it would be relevant.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's like you get so caught up with all of the stuff that you've known for a while that it's easy to forget not everybody is at the same place as you.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I know, especially for this crew, and one of the cool things that I think we'll see going forward, especially, is, this crew here is really starting to get to the point where, kind of like you've mentioned before, Kody, the crew itself is starting to come together for sure. But it's kind of that early phase of, oh, cool, we're all gelling, and then all of a sudden, okay, somebody new's coming in here who's like really new, and then everyone's like, oh, wait a minute, there are experiences and weird shit going on outside of our own weirdness that we have going on. Oh yeah, we should probably take a step back and realize that, hey, we as a crew are not the center of the universe for a hot minute, and that other people don't just immediately know you know what's been going on.
Yeah.
It's that there's been so much shared experience lately. I genuinely think, and I think it makes sense beyond just the player perspective of this group. Fortune's Blade has been through so much weirdness together in such a short period of time that everyone's on the same wavelength, that now that we have someone who is very helpful and has their own thing, and it's like, man, I've only been here a couple days, and everyone's like, oh wait, you don't know all of this other stuff that we've had going on, all of these other issues. I think it's gonna be interesting to see, and I think it's gonna be cool to see how everyone kind of adapts to that, and as we start to tell Haru things, how Haru will adapt to previous adventures and the things that are happening and have happened to Fortune's Blade, because there's some weird stuff.
I'm excited for those moments.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap this up. But last question as we begin to wrap this up. So, obviously, where we left it off, we had just kicked the crap out of a dragon. That's what I'm going with. You can get mad at me later if you want to, Connor. We kicked the crap out of a dragon. So
it was mutual.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a lot of these weird adventures in front of us, clearly. What are two things. What kinds of things or sort of weird things are like you kind of thinking, ooh, this could potentially happen and this might be really cool? Like, go as far out on a limb as you want to. And two, what is one like little thing in like just a couple of sentences that you would like really want to see like going forward in terms of like location or like type of monster or type of thing that we have to solve? Becca, we'll start with you on this one.
Oh God.
Ha! That's right. Think fast.
Panic.
This is lightning round. Come on.
I really want to get into the psychological. Like, and I know Connor's fond of that too, so I know it's like totally an option. But like, and we got kind of a hint of it with like some stuff with Morgan, who's not currently playing with us. But like, I would love to like really deal with an enemy that tries to like convince you over to their side. And I don't want like, oh, he sounds totally reasonable, like maybe he's actually a good guy. I don't want that. I want like, don't you want power? Don't you want, revenge on these people who harmed you in the past? I can give you this to you. That sort of thing. Sort of feeding into like what characters might want, and then they have to like resist. Like they have to resist the temptation. So sort of like a more of a dialogue kind of thing. And because I think that can get really dramatic, and also maybe more mind control, but that kind of ties in with that.
Yeah.
That always gets so dramatic when someone gets mind control and it's like, ah, I'm sorry.
I'm beating the shit out of my friends. I hate this. Like, just hit me, please.
There's a reason I prepared calm emotions.
There you go. Oh, yeah. It's a good thing that we have Kody here, especially in a couple of these fights. Cause
it's
been
a
like,
useful spell, but it's very niche.
Yeah. And yet you've had 2 uses to use it 2 fights in a row.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure if I'm believing the fact that it's actually niche.
Given how many times we've been frightened in the past like several sessions, it'll continue to come in handy.
Mm-hmm.
Kody screaming in the background, "This is a niche spell, I swear!" Connor yelling, "This is the 4th time you've used it in the past 10 minutes. What the fuck?"
Yeah.
That is how this game goes, though. To be fair, anyone who has listened to any bit of any of the adventures of Fortune's Blade can tell you it's always the weird niche things that apparently get used all the damn time, and we forget. Oh, I have this normal ability. This is a thing I can use. Oh crap.
Yeah. I mean, I had to reveal my ultimate combo the first session, which has been described as gross, disgusting.
I mean,
and
oh yeah,
it's like
that was nice. Gale was happy about that.
maximizing it is over 300 healing.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Gale would appreciate that, especially with how much he was getting punched in the face.
But yeah, like for example, just to mention that, because it just reminded me how I didn't know how base sneak attack worked, because I was just like constantly doing swashbuckler rules or flanking and getting advantage. So it's like when I had the opportunity to get sneak attack by normal means, I was like, what? I can do that?
Wait, what?
All I need is an ally also fighting the person or whatever.
Yeah. That's the joy of sneak attack.
I don't have to put myself in mortal harm.
What? That's literally Gale every time going, I don't have to go reckless.
Yeah, you finally didn't go reckless this one time because I was flanking with you. And you were like, I don't have to.
I don't have to do this thing and put myself in even more danger. Because the amount of times that Connor somehow, like, I go reckless, it's like, oh, damn, I missed. Like, no, you have advantage. You get to roll again. Oh, it's 20-something. Yeah, no, see, you hit.
Yeah, the day I finally used an attack cantrip.
That will be wild.
Oh.
You'll
We'll
go
be like,
unhinged just like Maddie did when she finally started using,
yeah.
Firebolt and just start burning things to the ground. Which, by the way, congratulations to Maddie on her finishing blow.
Yeah,
This
her
last
finishing
episode, that was pretty cool.
blow, her successful immolation. It's all good.
Oh yeah, all sorts of good stuff.
Mhm.
All right, Kody, same question to you. What's one thing that you would like to see, and what's one thing you're looking forward to?
So one thing I'd like to see is also kind of going into the more psychological aspect of it, but in this case it would be the actual creation and almost metamorphosis that is tied in with this Lord of the Sea. How did these people change to become more fish-like? Is this reversible in a way that doesn't just kill them? Can this link be severed where those people don't just turn to mush?
Yeah.
And I feel I might have some tools to help figure that out with all of the medicine checks on the various parts that are useful. But without the effects, the full range of the effects being known, to actually delve into that and use some of those items that have potentially unintended consequences is a bit of a risk at this point in time.
Yeah, yeah. That's totally like severing that connection and like quote unquote rescuing those people was something that definitely crossed my mind earlier, and I completely forgot about.
Mm-hmm. It's like,
So funny story. I will let you guys in on this. Yeah, it's being recorded, Connor, so you can tell that I'm not giving anything away. I, as the player, and this is the reason why I rolled for Gale, had an idea of how to accomplish that. And I asked Connor, and it would have worked. So next campaign, you can count on me to play an intelligence character, because then I can do that shit.
yeah.
I was so mad.
So
Aw.
I know how with the current party there are multiple ways to do it, and I came up with one like completely like solid way to do it, and his reaction was, "Oh, that would work."
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, next time, if
We'll
we're
probably fit
willing
more
to
pirates
expend
like
like
this.
100 gold worth of diamonds, I could attempt a greater restoration or something like that.
We do have
See
some
what
diamonds.
that does.
Yeah. We'll have to see. I think there are a lot of options. There are a lot of things that could potentially happen with that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And something that I'm looking forward to. That's kind of tough because there isn't too much that has gone on yet to base it off of. But as you might be aware, I was in the game that used this world 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and so there are certain parts of the world that I know a lot more about which I of course can't talk about.
Mhm.
But
That's
I'd
just fair.
certainly say I'm looking forward to the ways like this character Haru is able to help with the artifacts as well as of course like the gods being all missing, because as my character mentioned, he doesn't really know exactly where his powers come from, but it's some being never really had contact with it, so he's searching for that, and I know that eventually that answer will come. But I think that it probably could be tied in somehow with these artifacts.
It'll be interesting to find out for sure. I usually try to not theorycraft so much about that stuff, so that is usually my thing. I always like hearing what everyone else thinks too, of like, oh, dude, like this could be a link and this could be a link. It's like, I mean, it could.
I mean, I also know a bit more about artifacts that I really can't say, because in the last game, one of the characters was a magus, which is kind of like the
A
mystic.
living artifact.
More or less, actually, and they were part of the organization that was looking for and collecting artifacts for some purpose that I can't say. And they intensively studying it, so they knew a lot about the basic ones. They even had a list of every single one that existed and knew where a bunch were. And the scope that some of them can do in people who have unlocked their full potential is pretty significant. So can't say anything more than that.
Too many spoilers already.
Yeah. Can't even say how significant that scope is.
Well,
No spoilers.
yeah, I'm excited to see. I'm excited to figure it out in game because
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm one of those people where I like experiencing all of that through the lens of the character. Just makes it feel more real, more interesting, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then real quick, as Gale, let's see here, and me, I'm excited for more sea shenanigans, because those are always fun.
You got to eat a boat.
Yeah, boy, Gale almost did at one point. Gale will eat. I can promise you, Gale will eat something weird. Gale does have the ring of the goat, by the way, Kody, for context. So Gale will eat something weird at some point. Be ready for that. I would love to see some sort of weird, either fully submerged or hidden away, Atlantean almost-esque temple thingy. Surprise, this thing is huge, Lord of the Sea can actually breathe normal air, and it's just chilling in his in-ground underwater palace thing somewhere. That would be really interesting and would probably throw me off a lot.
Gosh, it would be hard to order a pizza.
I know, right? What do you mean you don't have submarines to deliver this to me? I don't. Come on, man. Sir, do you know how much oxygen costs nowadays? Anyway, oh man. I think one of the things that is going to happen, though, I think, especially with how this group is starting to come together, and especially with what Haru brings to the table, I think one of the things that is going to happen is we are going to face either a really weird boss battle or a really weird puzzle, and somehow find one of the ways to either get around it or end it super quickly that doesn't involve a lot of fighting and is going to leave most of the players and the characters completely confused as to how this was an actual challenge.
Let me tell you about this one time. We were facing this sphinx type creature in front of a temple, and it was supposed to be basically the big bad boss right before the big bad boss, the hardest fight in the game, and we had to beat it as a challenge. And so I thought creatively with Mickey's who was a bard, it was I challenge you to a joke telling competition, and I cast Tasha's Hideous Laughter, and it failed. And so my character said, a man walked into a bar, he said ouch, and we won the challenge because I beat him. And it's this whole fight that the game had been building up for weeks ended like that.
That's awesome. I love those. I love those. Those are always the good stories for D&D for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll see if Fortune's Blade can get themselves into anything like that coming up this Saturday and every Saturday. If you're listening to this later on, be sure to check us out. If you like watching live, twitch.tv/Dicefunctional. You can also follow us on Twitter at Dicefunctional with an underscore at the end. We'll let you know when we're going live, what sessions we're on, all the places to catch VODs, all the places to catch the podcasts, so that way you can enjoy this game with us. Follow along as our wonderful audience. We appreciate you guys. And I appreciate both Becca and Kody. Thank you, both of you guys, for joining me on this. A lot of fun. I love doing this. And Kody, especially, for coming on as our guest. Hopefully we'll have you on at least, one more time here in the future, and we'll keep track of what Haru's doing and stuff like that. It'll be a lot of fun. But we've got some stuff to get prepared, and we got to start getting ready for our next adventure. So thank you so much, guys, for listening, and we will catch you all in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.